I still remember the roar of that engine, the guttural growl of my childhood car as I turned the key, each vibration coursing through my hands like the heartbeat of something alive. It wasn't just a machine. It was the embodiment of freedom I had fought for, with every allowance dollar saved and every extra chore completed. I named her Aria, after the song I'd heard on the radio the first time I ever drove her, a melody that seemed to rise and fall with the curves of the road. But when they sold her, when my parents handed her away without so much as a single conversation, it felt like they had sold a piece of my soul. I was 23, scrambling to make my mark in the city, balancing shift work at a cafe with evenings spent sketching business plans and dreaming of something bigger. Aria had been my constant companion through nights that bled into dawn, through heartbreaks and breakthroughs both. She had a personality. I swear it. The way her headlights dimmed just a fraction if I left her waiting too long. Or the way she seemed to purr in contentment when I leaned into a particularly tight curve on winding back roads. The morning I discovered she was gone, I met my mother in the driveway. Her lips were pressed into a tight line, her hands shuffling through the papers they'd been handed. My father lingered behind her, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. The dealership name scrawled across the paperwork glared at me like an insult. I looked at them both, voice tremulous but loud enough to carry through the empty space where Aria once waited. "You sold her?" My mother blinked, as though surprised I didn't already know. "We couldn't afford the repair, darling. The transmission was going. It would cost a fortune." There was pity in her tone, as if she were delivering bad news about a sick pet. But Aria wasn't sick. It was a transmission, an engine hiccup that I knew how to fix. I had studied auto mechanics. I'd stayed late in high school workshops to soak up every bolt and brake pad detail. I wasn't rich in dollars, but I was rich in willpower. I could have worked 2 jobs to pay for that repair, and I made that clear in the words I let hang, harsh and crumbling through my lips. "You didn't ask me." Everything inside me ruptured. Betrayal, anger, grief, determination. I left the house that morning wearing Aria's old leather gloves, the ones I'd bought with my own money, and stepped into the city's pulse. The sky over New Orleans had that heavy, humid promise of rain. I could smell the promise in the air, like something poised to change. Because that day, I vowed, would be the moment I stopped begging for scraps of my own past. That day, I would take back what was mine, and more. I spent weeks trailing the dealership, lying in wait in a rented sedan as the salesman strolled out for lunch, noting the license plate, the sticker on the window. I collected photographs, jotting down the model numbers and VINs in a battered notebook. Every detail mattered. I made calls at night to lawyers who specialized in consumer rights, and realized there was no legal route to reclaim what my parents had sold legitimately, bill of sale and all. The law did not love me like Aria had. It did not see my sweat. It did not honor every tiny gear tuned to precision under my hands. So I did what only felt natural. I started sketching plans for taking that dealership apart from the inside. I pictured signing a purchase agreement, standing before the same lot where Aria now gleamed under fluorescent showroom lights, and saying, "This is mine." Even the idea made my pulse race, hotter than any engine I'd ever coaxed to life. I learned their inventory valuation methods, social media campaigns, foot traffic strategies. I dreamed of restructuring their sales approach, introducing community events and restoration workshops, placement tactics that would draw more than wealthy weekend customers, young dreamers like me who believed in the magic of an old car. I took up a second bartending gig at a dive bar on Magazine Street, pouring drinks to tally up every dollar I could funnel toward a down payment. I sold my own sketches as limited prints, found investors among the art patrons who frequented local galleries, and all the while I imagined that one day I'd drive Aria out of her showroom prison, spray her paint fresh with deep midnight blue, and let her engine growl in triumph beneath my fingertips once more. Every day was a feverish pulse of progress, meetings with potential backers in coffee shops, endless spreadsheets in the early hours, and my mother's voice over the phone, coaxing me to take it easy, as if I were a delicate ornament rather than a woman on fire. The closer I got, the more I realized that this wasn't just about a car. It was about respect. Respect for my dreams, respect for my autonomy, respect for the promise I'd made to myself. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. Dawn broke with the steady hum of my phone buzzing on the bedside table, messages from investors, reminders of calls I'd promised to return, and an alert that the dealership lot would open in 2 hours. I sat up, heart still racing from last night's dreams of Aria's glossy hood under neon lights. The air in my apartment smelled like coffee and paint fumes, a blend I had come to associate with purpose. I dressed quickly in fitted jeans and a leather jacket that smelled faintly of oil and ambition. No makeup, no frills, just me and the drive I carried in my veins. My reflection in the small vanity mirror caught my eye, determined, a slight crease of fatigue under my dark-rimmed eyes, but unbreakable. I paused, pressing a hand against the glass as if to steady myself. "This is real," I whispered, tracing the faint scar above my eyebrow, an old mark from when I'd flipped under the chassis of another car I used to tinker with. It felt like a badge of honor, the first of many scrapes and bruises I would collect on this path. By the time I reached the dealership, the morning light had softened the edges of every vehicle on the lot. Rows upon rows of sedans and SUVs glinted in neat lines. I crossed my arms and scanned the scene, counting the minutes before the sales team would trickle in. My plan hinged on a single moment, walking into that office, documents in hand, and proving beyond doubt that I was the one who could breathe life into this place. Inside the small office, the walls were plastered with framed photographs of luxury cars and community events funded by the same owners who had sold my Aria. I recognized faces, politicians, civic leaders, staring back at me with practiced smiles. My gaze landed on a single award, Top Performing Dealership, 2019. Underneath, a plaque boasted a customer satisfaction rating of 98%. Pity they never bothered to call me when they sold Aria. The receptionist looked up as I entered, her brows knitting. "Can I help you?" she asked, voice polite but edged. I offered my most disarming smile. "I'm here to see Mr. Bennett." The name made her pause, pencil hesitating in midair. "He's not in today." A small victory fluttered in my chest. He was likely tied up in meetings plotting their next marketing campaign. Perfect. I wandered the showroom floor, lingering near the service desk, where a harried mechanic chatted with a customer about oil changes. My eyes traced the underside of the nearest lift, memorizing the layout, imagining where Aria might have stood that morning. Every detail counted: the angle of the hydraulic arm, the placement of toolboxes, the scent of brake cleaner hanging in the air like a challenge. I slipped away to the manager's office at the back, where the door was slightly ajar. Inside, stacks of invoices, employee files, and market analysis charts littered the desk. On the corner sat a leather-bound guest book, its cover cracked. I opened it to reveal signatures from locals who'd praised the dealership's service. The page was blank. Waiting, like an invitation, I snapped a photo. In that moment, I felt the power shift. I wasn't the crying child begging for scraps of a memory anymore. I was the woman who could stand at the helm of this empire. My phone buzzed again. A message from Nathan, one of my angel investors, asking for my ETA and reminding me that today's presentation would make or break their confidence. I inhaled, steeling myself. The time for planning was over. I retreated to the private waiting room, where I arranged my notes and took a call with my lawyer to confirm that the purchase agreement clauses were airtight. We finalized the contingencies, how I'd assume the existing inventory at current valuation, renegotiate supplier contracts, and restructure the incentive program for the sales team. My mind raced through projected cash flows and balance sheets, but I kept my voice steady and warm when I spoke. When Nathan and his team arrived, clad in tailored suits and crisp linens, I greeted them with a firm handshake that crackled like electricity. "Thank you for coming early," I said. They seated themselves around the small conference table, eyes sharp. I laid out the documents, letters of intent, financing agreements, and a detailed operations plan. I told them about my vision for community workshops where locals could learn basic car maintenance, my plan to restore classic models like Aria herself, and my strategy to tap emerging markets with eco-friendly upgrades. As I spoke, I saw the skepticism soften. They leaned forward, flipping through the pages, murmuring about growth projections and market share. When I finished, the room was silent. My pulse drummed in my ears as I waited for the verdict. Just then, my mother's voice crackled through on speaker. An unexpected interruption. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, trembling. I realized she had no right to know the details yet, but I pressed the button. "Yes, I'm sure. This is my chance," I gestured to Nathan. "And these are the people who believe in me." Nathan cleared his throat, exchanging glances with his associates. "Let's move forward," he said, setting down his pen. "We're in." My chest thundered. Victory tasted like metal and motor oil. Yet, as the papers were signed and I shook hands with new partners, a single nagging thought settled in the pit of my stomach. Buying the dealership was one thing, but reclaiming Aria herself would demand a reckoning that none of them would see coming. Without warning, the showroom lights flickered, plunging the lot into a brief gray dawn before stabilizing. My breath caught. Something in that moment felt both ominous and exhilarating, as though the world itself was holding its breath alongside me. And then the intercom crackled to life. "Ms. Holloway, please come to the back lot. There's someone here to see you." My heart lurched. I set down my paperwork, smoothing the edges like a shield. "I'll be right back," I said, excusing myself. The conference room doors closed behind me with a click that echoed. I stepped into the corridor, every step carrying me closer to the unknown. The lot's morning hum seemed to drop an octave, and I braced myself for whatever, and whoever, awaited. I rounded the corner and stopped dead. There, under the early sun, stood Aria, paint-chipped, wheels spun dustily, hood open, and next to her, the dealer who sold her, wearing a smug grin that said he'd never expected to face me again. I swallowed hard, the world narrowing to that car and that man. My hand rose, hovering over the hood. "You sold her," I said, voice low. He laughed, shrugging as though it were no big deal. "She wasn't meant for the average buyer, but maybe you're that special buyer." The words hit me like a brick. My pulse surged, adrenaline and fury entwining. I took a single step forward, and the engine beneath Aria's hood rattled, a familiar purr that stoked the fire in my veins. And as his grin faltered, I realized this was just the beginning of my reckoning. The late morning sun cast a golden haze over the row of cars, but I barely noticed. My mind was locked on Aria and the man who dared to smirk at her memory. I crossed the distance between us in 3 long strides, the gravel crunching beneath my boots like drum beats. "Why bring her out here?" I demanded, voice low and steady, the heat pooling behind my eyes. He tapped the side of his nose, an irreverent gesture that made my skin crawl. "Thought you'd want to look before finalizing your purchase." His gaze was too casual, too condescending. "You've sealed the deal, Ms. Holloway. Everything's yours now, including her." I stared at the chipped midnight blue paint, the swirl marks from careless cleaning, the small dent where someone had backed into the bumper. Aria looked diminished. It stabbed me. "Everything except her is mine," I said, swallowing. "You sold her to someone else." His grin faded. "I kept her in inventory at the same valuation. I figured it made your comeback sweeter. Prove you have what it takes, and I'll hand her keys over." He shrugged. "That's business." I clenched my fists, rage spiking like nitro. "You're playing games." "Life's a game, sweetheart." He extended a hand to the lot manager, who stepped forward, rolling his eyes as if used to this routine. "Make the best offer by end of day, and she's yours. The rest goes to an auction tomorrow morning. Simple as that." My heart hammered. My carefully crafted plan hadn't accounted for this public hostage. The auction clause, in the purchase agreement, I'd missed it in the fine print. Panic lapped at the edges of clarity. If I didn't outbid the highest buyer by tomorrow, Aria would slip through my fingers forever. Without thinking, I darted back to the office, scanning the lot manager's clipboard where the auction sheet was taped beneath his pen. I snatched it, skimming the estimated bid price, $25,000. A laugh caught in my throat. $25,000? It was a fraction of the dealership's valuation, but well beyond my current liquid assets. My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. "Saw the deal went through. Congrats. When do we celebrate?" I stared at the message, guilt coiling around me. I'd celebrated prematurely. "I'll need to talk to you," I typed back. Then I called my lawyer, who confirmed the auction clause was legally binding. "You can sue later, but legally you have to compete in the auction if you want the car," she said, voice sympathetic but firm. She outlined options. Request an injunction, but it would take weeks, risk derailing the larger acquisition. I needed a plan V2, fast. I slumped into the conference room chair, closing my eyes. The weight of every decision pressed on me. Every hour wasted now made tomorrow's bid that much tighter. I had 9 hours until the lot closed for the auction listing, and 70 hours until the auction itself. It was time to mobilize. I pulled out my sketchbook and began drafting a rapid-fire campaign, a flash fundraiser targeting car enthusiasts and local media, promising a limited edition workshop series with Aria at the center, my own story as the hook. I texted earliest contacts, drafted emails to local radio stations, and reached out to a social media strategist friend who owed me a favor. Every second counted. I sent the first email to local auto blogs, historic restoration for a young entrepreneur, help me reclaim my story. I went live on Instagram, camera trembling, telling a condensed version of my journey with Aria, imploring viewers to donate toward a stake in her future. Donations would grant naming rights for parts of the restoration workshop. My mother would cringe at the idea, but it would work. Authenticity was my currency. Responses trickled in, $50 here, $100 there. Comments poured with words of encouragement. By lunchtime, I'd raised $3,000. Progress felt like sand slipping through my fingers. Good, but not enough. I pivoted to pitching the story to a local TV station, pushing for an evening feature that could supercharge donations. Meanwhile, I called my supplier contacts, negotiating a deferred payment schedule to free up capital. I peeled off $5,000 from my business line, incurring interest but worth the risk. I was playing a dangerous game, but adrenaline sharpened my focus. On the lot, I arranged to meet the manager at 3 p.m., ready to make a provisional bid. He eyed the stack of tapers in my hand, numbers scribbled in marker. "How much you willing to go?" he asked, voice bored. I met his gaze, steeling myself. 30,000. His jaw clenched. That's bold. His pen hovered over the clipboard. I watched it drop, heard the faint scratch of ink. You've set the bar. If no one tops you by auction day, it's yours. But if someone bids higher, he shrugged. Game on. I left the lot, pulse racing, head buzzing with calculations and contingency plans. Tonight, I'd need to stage my biggest push yet. The TV feature, the media blitz, the final rally of supporters. Failure wasn't an option. Aria was more than a car. She was the proof that my blood, sweat, and determination meant something. That evening, I stood under the neon glow of the TV station marquee, clutching my press packet and proof of donations. The crowd milling around filming crews felt like an ocean of potential. My phone buzzed nonstop. Donations climbing, people sharing my live stream. The hashtag Save Area trending regionally. Hope surged. I took a deep breath and walked through the studio doors to make my case. Stepping under the fluorescent lights of the TV station lobby felt like crossing into another world, one where stories became legend and legends sold airtime. My pulse was a drumroll in my ears as I approached the reception desk, clutching the folder of press materials and screenshots of the donor campaign. The receptionist gave me a polite nod before directing me down a maze of corridors that smelled of electronics and stale coffee. I glanced at my reflection in the tinted glass of a studio door, streaks of makeup on my cheeks, eyes bright with determination. My heart fluttered, fear and excitement bundling together, because if I could convince one evening news anchor that my fight to reclaim Aria was a story worth telling, the floodgates would open. Nationwide coverage, donations pouring in, social pressure on the dealership manager. Aria's salvation might hinge on this moment. Behind the glass window of the control room, technicians monitored multiple screens, satellite feeds, teleprompter scripts, and the digital clock ticking closer to my slot. A production assistant ushered me into a small green room. where I barely registered the cold plastic furniture before sinking into a vinyl chair. Walls were plastered with headshots of anchors, some smiling, some serious, and a scrawled-in marker schedule that placed me at 7:15 p.m. 15 minutes from now. I exhaled, sliding off my jacket and smoothing the front of my blouse. I reviewed my notes one last time. Concise points, emotional beats, a call to action to support my campaign, and witness the tainted history of my car-turned-vanquished dream. My lawyers carefully vetted quotes, snapshots of Aria. The first time I drove her out of my parents' driveway, the dent I fixed myself, the chip on the hood that became a badge of resilience. A knock at the door jolted me upright. A young producer poked her head in, clipboard in hand. "You're up in 5, she whispered. "They'll cue you when the partner break ends. Just speak to the camera, then join the anchor at the desk for an interview. Keep it under 3 minutes." Together they led me down the final stretch. Studio lights glowing through narrow windows, the hum of cameras on rolling tripods, and the muffled chatter of makeup artists and sound engineers. I paused at the threshold, inhaled the haze of hairspray and mixed adrenaline, and stepped into the spotlight. The host, a seasoned anchor named Helen Morrison, smiled warmly. Her red hair caught the light, and her professional poise put me at ease, even as the cameras clicked on. Tonight, a young entrepreneur fights to reclaim the car she calls family. Julia Holloway joins us to tell her story. "Julia, welcome." I offered a confident nod. The red tally light glowed behind her. I took a breath, imagining an invisible thread pulling each word back to those watching from their living rooms. "Thank you, Helen. When I was 23, my parents sold my childhood car without asking me. That car, Aria, wasn't just metal and rubber. It was my ticket to independence, a witness to every milestone I built on my own. Now, I'm racing against time to buy back not only a vehicle, but the symbol of my self-made success." The camera zoomed in subtly, embedding the urgency in my tone. Helen glanced over, gentle empathy in her eyes. "Your campaign has already raised thousands. Tell our viewers how they can help." We cut to a split screen, my face on one side, Aria rolling across the dealership lot on the other. I explained the online fundraiser, the upcoming auction, and the broader vision, turning the dealership into a community hub for car restoration workshops and youth mentorship programs. Every dollar brings me closer to driving Aria home and proving that determination can rewrite the rules of a system built to hold you back. In those few minutes, everything coalesced. Personal narrative, clear ask, and a vision that resonated. The teleprompter scrolled my final lines. Visit savearia.com. Donate what you can. Share this story. Together, we'll show that passion can power more than engines. It can drive change. Then the tally light went dark. I followed Helen to a small table beside the anchor desk, where 2 glasses of water awaited. The floor manager gave a thumbs up, and I exhaled, adrenaline unspooling. Back in the green room, notifications flooded my phone. Tweets from local reporters, messages from strangers pledging support, and an email subject line that made my chest tighten. Urgent bid update. I opened it. A confidential note from the auction house confirming that my public campaign had spurred 3 additional high bids, pushing the minimum up to $45,000. My stomach twisted. It was time to decide, double down on fundraising, negotiate a private sale, or risk everything on a final all-in bid. Each option carried risk and sacrifice. I pressed my palm to the cool green room wall, bracing myself. Outside, the news ticker ran the headline, "Young Entrepreneur Battles to Reclaim Childhood Car Community Rallies." The world was watching. My phone buzzed again. A text from my mother, simply reading, "I believe in you." Tears blurred my vision. Hers was the support I craved most. With a sudden clarity, I realized the fight was no longer just for Aria. It was for every dream I dared to build on my own terms. And so I picked up my phone and dialed my legal team. It was time to make the most audacious move yet. The night wrapped around me like a velvet cloak as I stepped into the city's glow, the echo of the TV station's lights still burning behind my eyelids. Every headlight I passed told a story, some of people commuting home, others of dreams on pause. I felt their collective pulse thrum, mingling with my own. I had one mission: raise the remaining $20,000 before dawn. I slipped into the back entrance of the Rusty Wrench, a bar I tended at late-night shifts. The familiar scent of old wood and whiskey soothed me, even as my mind raced. I greeted Marco, the owner, with a nod, and he slid me a glass of water in lieu of the usual draft. "Big night?" he asked, wiping down glasses. I leaned in, voice barely a whisper. "Need to use your open mic, one song, one speech." His eyebrows shot up. "You sure? Your sets usually end at midnight." I nodded. "This one has to run." At 10 o'clock sharp, the bar's lights dimmed and a hush fell over the crowd. I took the makeshift stage, violin in hand, an unexpected choice, but one that spoke to my roots. The first notes of an original melody drifted across the room, haunting and sweet, rising and falling like Aria's engine. Faces turned from their drinks, the melody punctuating the air. When the final note faded, I set the violin aside and reached for the mic. The hush deepened. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe! Now, back to the story. The phrase felt surreal, straddling this world and the digital realm I'd conquered hours ago. I told them about Aria, how she had carried me through my parents' doubts, my own insecurities, and the long nights building my business. I showed photos on my phone, first kisses, late-night purchases, a small dent from a fender bender I'd fixed myself. I explained the auction, the stakes, and the $45,000 that now stood between me and my past. Silent at first, the bar erupted into applause. Then, hands went up. $50, $100, $500. Marco passed a bucket around. By the end of the night, we'd collected over $7,000. It wasn't the full sum, but it was momentum. Connections formed over pints and pledges, ideas for crowdfunding partnerships, mentions of local radio shows eager for human interest segments. As I stepped off stage, someone handed me a scrap of paper with a phone number. "Try the Classic Car Club. They love a David and Goliath story." I tucked it in my pocket. The next hours blurred. Texts and calls, meetings in late-night diners with potential sponsors, hurried calculations in the soft glow of phone screens. By 3 a.m., I'd lined up a private investor willing to cover $10,000 in exchange for a stake in my restoration workshops. Another $3,000 pledges from a local mechanic union promising volunteer labor in exchange for training programs. And the car club president agreed to broadcast the auction livestream to their network, potentially hundreds more eyes on our fight. The sun started to peek over the horizon as I returned to the dealership, bag heavy with checkbooks, signed letters of intent, and digital pledges. I found the lot manager waiting by Aria, clipboard in hand, eyes tired but curious. My heart thundered as I approached. I laid out the payment plan, $45,000 in immediate funds, plus verified pledges for an additional $15,000 in kind services and sponsor commitments. He scanned the documents, tapping his pen. "You've done your homework," he said, nodding slowly. "I'll present this to Mr. Bennett. You'll get an answer by noon." I exhaled, adrenaline battered but alive. As I turned to leave, the early morning breeze picked up, carrying the smell of rain. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, mirroring the storm of anticipation inside me. I headed home to catch a few hours of sleep, or at least, try. My phone's alarm was set for 11:30, a reminder that the clock was still counting down. The city lay quiet, the world suspended between night and day, much like my own fate. And as I drifted off on a thread of exhaustion, I knew the real test was yet to come. Convincing the owner to believe in this ragtag coalition of supporters, and in a woman who refused to be defined by her past. The morning sun burned away the last few wisps of doubt. As I raced toward the dealership, my car's engine humming with a promise I felt in my bones. The world seemed to tilt slightly with anticipation, the air crisp and charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. My mind replayed the night's arrangements. Investors primed, sponsors committed, community groups rallied. But real proof lay ahead in that office, behind the closed door where fate would be sealed. I parked Aria's Spare, a borrowed hatchback lined with sponsor decals, and strode up the concrete steps to the entrance. Inside, the lot manager caught my eye and gestured toward the back office. I nodded, smoothing the creases in my blazer as I passed sales reps arranging windshields and polishing chrome. Their curious stares trailed me like shadows. I held my gaze level, every step measured, every breath counted. The back office door was ajar, the manager perched on the edge of a desk, phone to his ear. He ended the call as I stepped in. "They're reviewing it," he said, voice a low rumble. "Mr. Bennett liked your initiative. He's considering an amendment to the sale agreement." My heart thudded. What kind of amendment? He tapped a digital tablet glowing with a draft contract. "He wants to let you take Aria now, with the understanding you'll deliver on your workshop commitments. The remaining balance, $15,000, can be offset by labored sponsorships and community services, but it has to be signed today." I blinked. It was everything I'd fought for, yet the weight of obligation pressed on me. And if I can't fulfill those commitments? The manager's gaze was sharp. "It's in the agreement. Failure to complete the workshops means forfeiture of the workshop program, not the car. Aria is yours, guaranteed." Relief mixed with adrenaline. This was more than a salvage. It was victory. But as I reached for the stylus, a voice cut through the tension. "Wait." I turned as Mr. Bennett emerged from the shadows of his private office, tall and imposing in his tailored suit. His gray-streaked hair was slicked back, but his eyes bore the same spark of defiance I remembered from our first meeting. "Miss Holloway," he began, voice measured, "you've shown resourcefulness and a hell of a lot of tenacity. But I need to be sure. Workshops and donations are fine, but this is a business. I need numbers." I squared my shoulders. "I have projections ready. 15 workshops over 6 months, each generating at least $2,500 in revenue and $1,000 in parts sales. Profit-sharing agreements with sponsors, marketing plans." He nodded, and I pulled out a fresh proposal binder, flipping to the section with annotated spreadsheets. "We project $60,000 in gross revenue, $25,000 in net profit, all allocated to expanding community programs and paying down existing debt on the dealership, starting with your $15,000 credit." He studied the pages, calculating. The office clock ticked loud in the hush. Finally, he set the binder down. "Impressive, but I'm adding one more condition. I want you to partner with my son Liam. He's the dealership's operations manager and could use your vision." Liam Bennett stepped forward, extending a hand. He was younger, less rigid than his father, freckles across his nose, a warm smile. "I've heard a lot about you, Julia. Happy to work together." Something in me relaxed. A partnership felt right, but I hesitated, conscious that alliances carried their own hidden curves. "I accept," I said, signing the amendment beneath his father's signature. The pen scratched across the dotted line, and with it, the last barrier shattered. A cheer rose from the service bay as the door opened, and Aria rolled in, wheels kicking up dust. She looked the same yet reborn, freshly polished, engine warmed, headlights bright as hope. I stepped toward her, knee brushing the door as if greeting an old friend. Liam stood beside me. "Welcome home, Aria," I whispered, voice catching. "We've missed you." And in that moment, in the echo of applause, the flash of cameras, and the hum of possibility, I knew the real journey was just beginning. As I slid into the driver's seat of Aria, the leather smelled faintly of cinnamon and motor oil, and I felt a rush of triumph I hadn't known in years. But victory had its own demands. Liam Bennett and I needed to transform this dealership into the community-driven hub I'd promised, all while proving that a car once sold without consent could become the spark of a new era. Our first morning together, Liam and I convened in the newly cleared workshop space, a cavernous bay with industrial lighting and walls primed for community notices. He wore a crisp dress shirt rolled at the sleeves dusted with metal shavings from testing out the new hydraulic lifts. I had traded in my evening shift uniform for business casual, a tailored blazer over a vintage t-shirt, jeans tucked into scuffed boots. "Okay," Liam said, stretching like he was about to play basketball, though he'd admit he hadn't touched one since high school. "Tell me again what a workshop is supposed to do." He leaned against a workbench, scattered with wrenches and flyers. I laid out my vision on a dry erase board. 10 weekend workshops on basic vehicle maintenance, followed by a series of restoration clinics in partnership with local artisans. Each ticket included access to parts and Q&A sessions. We'd cap each group at 15 participants to ensure hands-on experience. He tapped a marker, eyebrows raised. Workshops cost us money in consumables and labor, he said. Where's the profit margin? I met his gaze. The goal isn't just profit. It's community goodwill, brand loyalty, and differentiation. Attendees will become lifelong customers. Plus, major sponsors cover materials. We only need staff time. He rubbed his chin. Sponsors? I pulled out sponsor logos. Local mechanics unions, parts suppliers, even a coffee shop chain that wanted brand visibility. Each had pledged resources in exchange for promotional placement and workshop credits. Liam nodded slowly. All right, let's pilot it this Saturday. He wiped away the board and shot me a look half smile, half challenge. The days that followed were a whirlwind. We posted flyers at community centers, scheduled social media announcements, and set up an online registration portal. I trained volunteer mechanics to guide participants through oil changes and brake inspections, while Liam handled logistics, restroom stalls, safety equipment, and snack tables. We worked side by side under buzzing fluorescent lights, our partnership forging something new and unexpected. Friday night, standing in the empty workshop among gleaming bay doors, I confided in Liam. I never thought I'd find someone who believed in the dream as much as I do. He shrugged, smiling. Don't get used to it. I'm still watching the bottom line. But hey, if we can get another 100 signups, I'll talk to my dad about expanding this to every dealership under his umbrella. My heart soared. Deal. We shook on it, the promise echoing off the concrete walls. Saturday morning, the first group arrived. A mix of retirees curious about cost savings, young adults learning car basics from necessity, and one bright-eyed teenager who reminded me of myself. The air buzzed with excitement as participants donned safety goggles and fetched toolkits. I introduced myself at the front. My voice rang with pride as I told them why Aria mattered and how every part of her story was about resilience. For the next 3 hours, we navigated through tire rotations and fluid checks. I watched as the teenager's hands shook with concentration while tightening lug nuts, then steady as he wiped sweat from his brow. A retiree marveled at how easy it was to replace air filters. Cameras from local news outlets captured the hands-on momentum, reporters asking questions and scrolling live updates across social feeds. By noon, we wrapped up. Liam tallied the day's success. 23 participants, glowing feedback, and a small surplus of parts donated. You were right, he admitted, handing me a thermos of coffee. That was worth every cent. We high-fived, and I realized this was the moment dreams cemented into legacy. That afternoon, Liam and I debriefed, refining the schedule, soliciting testimonials, planning next month's advanced engine tuning clinic. We celebrated with a late lunch at a food truck parked outside, plotting future collaborations with an EV startup interested in electrifying classic models. Just as I sipped my first bite of spicy taco, my phone pinged. An email from a major investor, subject line reading, urgent, exclusive offer. My pulse quickened as I opened it. The message detailed an offer to buy a 40% stake in the dealership. An infusion of capital that could accelerate workshops and restoration initiatives beyond anything I'd envisioned. But the email carried a catch. They wanted majority control of the program using Aria as the centerpiece, potentially sidelining my community-focused approach in favor of celebrity publicity stunts. It was tempting, capital and exposure, but it would mean sacrificing the authenticity at the heart of my journey. I glanced at Liam, whose phone glowed with the same notification. His jaw tightened. What are you thinking? He asked, eyes searching mine over taco's steam. I swallowed, mind spinning with possibilities and pitfalls. If we accept, we can scale faster than I ever dreamed, but it might destroy everything we've built. Liam nodded slowly. We have to decide tonight. My heart pounded, caught between the promise of lightning speed growth and the risk of losing myself in the process. I looked out at the blue sky, felt the breeze that once carried me home, and closed my eyes. When I opened them, I knew the choice would define the next chapter, not just for Aria, but for every dreamer who would follow our story. And as the sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and violet, I whispered to myself, this is my story, and I'll be damned if anyone else writes the end. I stared at the email blinking on my phone, its words promising an injection of capital so large it could transform the dealership overnight. My stomach churned as I considered the terms. A 40% stake, with decision-making priority on high-profile events featuring Aria, bringing paparazzi-style publicity and lucrative sponsorships. It sounded like a whirlwind faster than anything I'd ever known, but it also felt like a whirlwind that could tear everything apart. Around me, the workshop buzz of Friday evening echoed faintly. Mechanics tuning engines, bright sparks of welders in the back bay, and Liam closing up with his crew. He caught my eye and approached, brow furrowed. "What did they say?" he asked. I handed him the phone, thumbs hovering over the screen. As he read, his face went from excitement to concern. He passed the phone back. "They're ready to wire the funds this weekend. You could have the capital by Monday." I nodded slowly. But at what cost? They want control of the narrative. They want Aria to be a marketing prop, not a symbol of grassroots empowerment. He looked at the workshop around us, at the volunteer mechanics and the faded posters of community events pinned to the walls. "We'll lose credibility with the people who matter, the ones who believed in us for authenticity." I paced between the cars lined up for service, mind racing. Each vehicle was a story. The classic model waiting for an engine overhaul, the compact hatchback that belonged to a single mother saving on repairs, the commercial van for local business. This place was more than a dealership. It was a living, breathing part of the community I'd vowed to serve. Liam followed me. "What if we counter-propose? Offer a smaller equity share, or restrict their involvement to funding only, with no creative direction?" I considered it, biting my lip. They made it clear. They want marketing control, no compromise. He sighed, pressing a hand to the workbench. "Then it's your call. Bigger leaps, or guarantee what we've built." My phone buzzed. Another investor inquiry, this time from a crowdfunding platform wanting to host a flash investment round. That could spread ownership among hundreds, keeping me in majority control but adding complexity and management. More voices, more opinions, but also more independence. The decision tree spun in my head. Traditional investor with big money and big demands. Grassroots crowdfunding with smaller investments and broader stakeholder engagement. Or bootstrap the rest, relying on workshops and sweat equity to build organically. Time ticked. The workshop closing bell rang in the distance. Liam's cue that tomorrow's early demonstrator vehicles needed prep. We had hours before I had to answer the investor email. I stepped outside into the cool night air, the city humming around me in a lull, street lamps flickering. I dialed my mother. She picked up on the first ring, her voice warm but softer than I'd heard in weeks. "How's everything? Did you get Aria back?" I smiled despite the knot in my chest. "I have her. I told her about the dealership purchase, the workshops, Liam, and now the investor offer." There was a pause. "Julia, you've worked so hard to make this place special. Don't let anyone take that away from you." Her words were a balm. "I can't," I said, repeating it like a mantra. "I won't." I hung up and exhaled a cloud of resolve into the night. I turned to find Liam watching me from the workshop doorway. "Decision made?" I nodded. "We're going grassroots. We'll launch the crowdfunding campaign. Small investors who believe in what we do, not just big names chasing a headline. We'll protect our narrative." His face broke into a grin. "Then let's get to work. We've got pitches to craft and stories to tell." We spent the rest of the night drafting campaign copy, filming behind-the-scenes footage with Aria in the foreground, and mapping out rewards for supporters, exclusive workshop sessions, behind-the-scenes restoration tours, and even naming rights for engine bays. By dawn, we had a robust campaign site ready. As the sky blushed pink, I uploaded the campaign from the dealership's rooftop balcony, Aria's silhouette framed against the sunrise. My finger hovered over the launch button. Below, the city began to stir, unaware of the revolution about to ignite. I closed my eyes and pressed it. The confirmation screen glowed. Backers began to trickle in immediately. $15, $25, $50. Small but meaningful. Comments poured in. "I believe in you. This is our community. Let's bring Aria home together." A notification popped. A local news outlet had picked up the campaign, promising an article by afternoon. Another, a national automotive magazine wanted a feature story. I felt a surge of hope. This was more than funding. It was community powered by belief. And as I glanced at Liam, who was loading tools into his truck, I knew we were stronger than any big money offer. But beneath the excitement, a nagging thought lingered. Bigger challenges lay ahead: production delays on workshop manuals, coordination with dozens of micro-investors, and the ever-present risk of backlash from those who'd bet on the big investor route. My phone buzzed again, Liam's name on the screen. I answered. His voice crackled. "Julia, we have a problem." The edges of triumph and turmoil blurred as I waited for him to finish. "Julia, do you copy?" Liam's voice crackled over the phone, tense and urgent. I pressed the phone to my ear as I made my way back into the dealership, the morning sun gilding the rows of cars like a spotlight. "I hear you," I replied, voice steady despite the knot tightening in my stomach. "What's up?" There was a pause, and I could almost feel him weighing every word before he spoke again. "It's the crowdfunding platform. They just sent an email. There's been suspicious activity flagged on the campaign." My brow furrowed. "What kind of activity?" He sighed. "A series of large pledges came in overnight, each exactly $5,000, from accounts tied to shell companies. Then another spike, 25 individual pledges at exactly $50 each, using new email addresses. The algorithm thinks it's automated bot activity. They've suspended the campaign pending verification." My heart plummeted. The momentum we'd built overnight, thousands of hopeful dollars, the community engagement, halted. "How long will it take to resolve?" I asked, panic creeping into my voice. "Could be days. They want ID verification for each backer over $100. And they're pulling the page down until it's cleared." He ran a hand through his hair. "Julia, we could lose everything." I closed my eyes, inhaling. I knew the risks of crowdfunding. Mass participation meant mass vulnerability. But I hadn't expected sabotage. Someone didn't want us to succeed. "Okay," I said, opening my eyes. "We can't wait. We need a backup plan. Launch a parallel campaign on our site directly. Email-based pledges with manual verification. Use the dealership's merchant account to process payments. And get the press release out. Supporter site now live. Help Julia reclaim Aria. We'll redirect everywhere." Liam hesitated. "We'll need the web team on standby. We might pull in 50 new pledges before lunch, but someone will have to manually validate each transaction." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Coordinate with our sponsors. Ask them to front-match pledges as soon as they come in. Emphasize urgency. Hackers tried to stop us. Your support is more crucial than ever." He exhaled. "On it. I'll call an emergency team meeting." I hung up, adrenaline surging. I sprinted through the dealership to where the desktop terminal stood. Fingers flying, I drafted the direct pledge page. Secure checkout, clear instructions, trust badges from our partners. I drafted an email to our mailing list. Loyal customers, workshop attendees, newsletter subscribers. I wrote, "They tried to stop us. Join our fight now at saveariadirect.com." Within minutes, my phone buzzed. A reply from the EV startup partner. They pledged $5,000 on the spot and offered to feature our story in their next investor newsletter. A local coffee chain committed another $3,000 in gift cards and branded merchandise for future workshops. Messages from community members rolled in. "Just donated. Keep fighting. You've inspired me more than you know." By lunchtime, we'd raised $12,000 through our direct pipeline. The dealership worked like a well-oiled machine. Mechanics pausing mid-wrench to cheer as the funds counter ticked upward on the big screen in the lobby. But as the afternoon sun dropped low, Liam returned from a meeting with the press. His face was ashen. "They've published it already," he said, sliding a printed newspaper onto the desk. The headline blazed, "Dealership Drama. Entrepreneur Accuses Big Investor of Undermining Crowdfunding Campaign." The article quoted an anonymous tipster claiming I'd sabotaged my own campaign to push users to the dealership's website for profit. I blinked, vision narrowing. "That's a lie," I seethed, snatching the paper. I scanned the text. Misquotes, half-truths, allegations of conflict of interest. My hands shook. "Who would?" Liam slammed his fist on the desk. Bennett Sr. He was furious when he learned we went grassroots. If he can't get his big money deal and control of the narrative, he'll destroy ours. I slammed the paper down. He's trying to play us dirty. Liam nodded grimly. We need to get ahead of this. A press conference. We control the story in our own words. I inhaled, mind racing. Yes, schedule it now. Email our network, get local TV crews here by 5, and on social media, live stream from the dealership. We'll address the allegations head on. He grabbed his phone. I'll loop in our legal team. We spent the afternoon preparing a statement. Transparent details of the platform's suspension, the direct pledge campaign's traction, the community's overwhelming support. We rehearsed responses to possible questions, from the EV partner to the local press. By 5 p.m., the dealership showroom was packed with journalists, cameras, and dozens of loyal supporters holding Save Aria signs. I stepped up to the podium, my heart pounding not with fear but with fierce determination. The camera's red lights glared at me, the microphone seemed to lean in. I looked out at the sea of faces, some flashing phones, others nodding. Liam stood beside me, arm linked through mine, solidarity etched in his stance. Thank you all for being here, I began, voice clear. Earlier today, false allegations were published claiming I sabotaged my own crowdfunding campaign. Let me be unequivocally clear. I did not, nor would I ever, undermine the generosity of those who believe in me. We faced a coordinated attack, attempts to hack our campaign and sabotage our community-driven efforts. I paused, letting the words sink in. But those attempts have only strengthened our resolve. We have launched a direct pledge campaign, and in less than 24 hours, we've raised over $30,000 from individuals and partners who share our vision for grassroots empowerment. Reporters scribbled, cameras zoomed. I held their gaze. This is not just about one car. It's about proving that determination, authenticity, and community spirit can overcome any obstacle. To Mr. Bennett Sr., I say, thank you for challenging me, because it has shown the world what we're capable of. And to everyone here, thank you for standing with me. Together, we will bring Aria home. A roar of applause filled the room. Flashbulbs popped. I felt that familiar surge, that magnetic charge when a story resonates. Amid the noise, I spotted my mother, tears in her eyes. My chest swelled. As the press conference broke up and interviews began, a message pinged on my phone, an email from the crowdfunding platform. Account reinstated. Campaign restored. Records cleared. I exhaled, a triumphant grin spreading across my face. Liam leaned in. Looks like we have the wind at our backs again. I nodded. And now we keep moving forward. Stronger than ever. Outside, Aria gleamed under the setting sun, waiting to carry me into the next chapter of this extraordinary journey. The morning light fell in slanted beams across the polished showroom floor, illuminating Aria's sleek curves as though she herself were an altar of possibilities. I stood before her, the hum of the night's victories still echoing in my bones, but there was no time to bask in success. Already, a new challenge loomed, expanding our workshops to meet demand, while balancing the demands of a rapidly growing stakeholder community. I slid my fingers along the steering wheel, feeling its cool leather beneath my palms, the same leather I'd stitched myself during a late-night restoration session. Each stitch had been a promise to myself, and now, pressed between my hands, those promises felt as urgent as ever. Behind me, the dealership doors clanged open, and Liam marched in, eyes alight with both excitement and concern. The first premium workshop is set for tomorrow, he said, voice low. Corporate sponsors want branding everywhere. But our grassroots backers are feeling sidelined. I closed my eyes. It was the conundrum of growth, the lifeblood of big money sponsors versus the heart and soul of community supporters. We'd won the public battle, but now I had to win the war for trust and integrity. Let's meet with both groups tonight, I decided, striding to the conference room and flipping on the conference call screen. On one side, the EV startup partners and coffee chain sponsors. On the other, a dozen backers from our crowdfunding campaign representing independent contributors. The faces flickered on screen, eager marketers in tailored suits and wide-eyed hobbyists in grease-stained overalls. I inhaled, gathering my thoughts. "Thank you all for coming," I began, voice steady. "We've come this far because every one of you believed in Arya's story. We owe our success to both our corporate and community partners. Tonight, I propose a unified plan: premium sponsorship recognition at major events, and exclusive community stamps in every workshop, hand-signed certificates, personalized toolkits, and backstage access for grassroots backers. Everyone contributes, everyone benefits." Murmurs rippled through the virtual room. After tense minutes, hands went up. Approvals from both sides. Relief washed over me. We'd found balance, at least for now. But the victory was fleeting. As I prepared to log off, my phone pinged with an urgent notification, a midnight call from my mother. My heart dropped. "Julia, you need to see this." Her voice trembled. She'd sent a link to a news alert. "Mysterious fire erupts at Community Auto Center. Workshop equipment damaged overnight." The headline flashed above grainy security footage of flames licking at the workshop bay doors at my dealership. I felt a cold shock, as though fire had burrowed into my chest. The smoke in the video curled upward, consuming everything we'd built. Without hesitation, I dashed from the conference room, Liam's voice trailing behind. "I'm on my way!" In minutes, we were back on the lot, sirens echoing in the distance. The workshop doors were ajar, charred edges glowing in the pre-dawn gloom. Mechanics stood by in hoodies and gloves, eyes red from smoke inhalation. Arya sat just outside, miraculously untouched, her paint reflecting the glow of emergency lights. I ran to her, pressing my hands against the hood as though seeking reassurance. Flames must have been inches away. "Who would do this?" I whispered, voice cracking. Liam scanned the scene, fists clenched. "Someone wants to burn us down, literally and figuratively." My mind raced through enemies. Bennett Sr., though he wasn't known for arson. A corporate rival threatened by our grassroots revolution? Or a desperate individual from the night the auction nearly took Arya away? I steadied my breath, summoning the same resolve that had fueled every step of this journey. "Whatever it takes," I said, voice fierce. "We rebuild. We rise from this. And we find who did it." Behind us, the sun peeked over the horizon, light cutting through smoke and fear. And as I looked at Arya's gleaming silhouette against the blaze's aftermath, I knew the fight for my dreams, and for this community, was far from over. The acrid smell of charred rubber and scorched metal clung to the air as I stepped onto the dealership lot, heart pounding against my ribcage like a frantic drum. The workshop's blackened doors stood as grim sentinels over the rubble of tools and parts. Firefighters and investigators milled about, their flashes bobbing in the pre-dawn gloom. Each footstep toward the wreckage felt like a betrayal of all I'd built. I approached the lead investigator, Detective Morales, a tall woman with a no-nonsense demeanor and sharp, observant eyes. She flipped through her notebook, pen poised. "Ms. Holloway, I need to ask you a few questions." I nodded, throat tight. "Anything you need." Her gaze swept the lot, lingering on Arya's pristine silhouette. "We have signs of accelerant usage at multiple points. Door seams, near the hydraulic lift controls. Intentional." Witnesses reported a figure near the back entrance around midnight. "Describe anyone who might have motive." A flurry of names swarmed my mind. Bennett Sr., bent on burying my community efforts, a rival dealership owner who loathed my success, or the anonymous tipster who had initially leaked misinformation. But I kept my answer tight. "I've drawn up a list of potential suspects and contacts. You have my full cooperation." She nodded. "We'll start there." As she turned away, I scanned the debris for survivors. The tools I used each day, the machinery I'd prized. A small group of mechanics hovered near a beaten workbench, their faces a blend of anger and exhaustion. I forced a smile. "We're going to clean up and rebuild, I promise." They nodded, defiant. Around us, volunteers from the community arrived, greeting me with solemn hugs and offers of help. The news of the fire had spread, and the same spirit that fueled our crowdfunding now converged in physical form. Neighbors, workshop attendees, local charities, all arriving with gloves, brooms, and portable lights. In the center of the chaos, Liam appeared, arms crossed, jaw set. I talked to the insurance company. We have coverage, but it'll take days to process. He paused. Detective Morales is looking into it, but she said she needs a suspect list by tomorrow morning. I exhaled, flexing my fingers away from the workshop door's remains. Then let's start investigating. We can't be reactive, we have to be proactive. Liam raised an eyebrow. You mean going after suspects ourselves? Yes, I said, pulling out my phone. I need to know who's behind this before they strike again. We convened in the conference room, which still smelled faintly of boardroom coffee and determination. I spread out folders containing every clue we'd collected, the list of shell companies, surveillance photos from the night of the fire, and email headers from the crowdfunding sabotage. We cross-referenced donors who vanished, suspicious email addresses, and potential enemies. Our insiders, like Mechanic Javier, can help identify unusual behavior, like someone asking about our security camera blind spots. Javier, a wiry mechanic with grease under his nails and kindness in his eyes, nodded. I noticed a guy, tall, dark hoodie, lingering near the side entrance a few days ago. He asked odd questions about when the lot was empty. I thought he was a prospective customer. My stomach clenched. Did you get a license plate? He shook his head. He was careful, but I got a photo of his shoes. Could be trace evidence. I scanned the image. Scuffed black boots, distinctive tread. Good. Keep an eye out for anything else, especially around the back lot. Liam tapped his pen. We should also notify our sponsors. They're worried about liability. Let them know we're moving forward but prioritizing safety. I nodded. Draft a letter. Invite them to a secure site visit once we have a clear timeline. We worked through the day, juggling volunteers, cleaning the workshop floor, and compiling the suspect list. By evening, the board was filled with sticky notes. Names, photos, flight plans, every detail we could find. As I reviewed the wall, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Be safe. Love you. Tears fuzzed my vision. Her concern reminded me why I fought. Not just for business, but for community, family, and reclaiming control of a life that once slipped away. That night, I sat in the empty showroom with Arya behind safety glass, her reflection mirrored in the polished floor. I traced the contours of her hood with my eyes, imagining the engine's soft purr beneath. Liam joined me, handing over 2 steaming mugs of coffee. We'll find who did this, he said softly, and when we do, they'll regret ever putting a match to our dreams. I raised my mug, heart galvanized, to resilience, and to reclaiming everything that's ours. Quote, we toasted in silence, the only sound, the distant wail of sirens and the soft whisper of determination echoing in the empty lot. Dawn arrived in a wash of pale gold as I climbed the creaking stairs to the rooftop office, the city humming beneath me like a beast waking. The fire-damaged workshop behind me seemed to sigh in relief under the morning light, its blackened edges a stark reminder of the previous night's ordeal. Today was another battlefield in our ongoing campaign to reclaim not just Arya, but every piece of dignity and respect that had been burned away. Liam was already there, leaning over his laptop, brow furrowed. His morning coffee sat untouched, steam curling upwards in a silent plea for warmth. Morning, I said softly, stepping beside him. He didn't look up. His eyes were fixed on the screen. We've got a hit, he murmured. One of the shell companies, tied to the donation sabotage, has an address in the industrial district north of here. Security footage from a neighboring warehouse captured the same scuffed boots Javier identified. We've got a window. He makes deliveries at night. My pulse quickened. Drive out there? He nodded. I alerted Detective Morales. She's en route, but I wanted you to lead the way. I squared my shoulders. Today's mission felt more personal than any strategy meeting or press conference. It was about confronting the person who dared threaten everything I'd built. I grabbed my jacket, keys, and slid Arya's throw blanket into my bag, an old habit of mine, comfort and memory woven together. On the drive north, the streets thinned, factories and warehouses lining both sides. The air smelled of oil and old machinery. We parked a block away, switching to the dealership's unmarked sedan. As we crept towards the warehouse, my boots padded against cracked concrete. The building's corrugated metal walls rose above us, windows dark and unwelcoming. Detective Morales waved us forward. She held up a flashlight and pointed at a side door frame, splintered wood and scorch marks. Accelerant residue here, and similar footprints match those at your workshop. Inside, we found crates with recent welding, likely to conceal equipment. Adrenaline surged. We entered through the open door, the beam of our lights cutting through dust motes. Inside, rows of wooden crates and metal shelving loomed. A single oil drum sat near the back, its lid pried open. The stench of gasoline hung thick. "This is it," Morales said. "He's moving equipment. Could be planning another attack or trying to destroy evidence of the fire." I swallowed hard, stepping forward. "We need to identify him." She nodded, pulling fingerprint kits from her bag. Liam and I surveyed the crates, each marked with cryptic codes. I pried open one, revealing stacks of used oil filters, hoses, and a pair of gloves identical to Javier's spotting. Morales lifted one glove with a tweezer, bagging it for evidence. Footsteps echoed above. A figure lurched onto a catwalk, silhouetted against a dusty skylight. He wore a dark hoodie, face hidden. He froze, then darted into a side corridor. I turned to Morales. After him. Before she could respond, I sprinted forward, adrenaline fueling me. The corridor narrowed, leading to a loading bay with an open roll-up door. Outside, a delivery truck sat idling, its rear doors ajar. The figure scrambled inside, disappearing behind stacked crates. I crept closer as the truck engine roared to life. "Stop!" I yelled, voice echoing. The driver shifted gears, but the cab remained empty. Panic flared. He'd climbed into the back. I scaled the side of the truck, hands gripping the metal edge. Inside, the space was dim, crates piled high. I spotted him crouched near the driver's cabin entrance, fumbling with a lighter. "Drop it!" I shouted, balancing on a narrow plank. He froze, face emerging from the shadows, stubble, sunken eyes, guilt etched in every line. You can't stop me," he whispered, voice cracking. "Who are you?" I demanded. "Why are you doing this?" He laughed, brittle as dry leaves. "Your little community project threatened everything. The dealership's profit margins. I did what needed to be done. You don't belong here." His words struck harder than any fire. "I belong? You're right. I belong more than you ever will. But this," I gestured to the crates, "this won't stop us. You've lost." I took a breath. "I'm taking you in." His shoulders sagged as police sirens wailed outside. Morales' voice called, "Step away from the crates!" The truck's engine died, lights flickering. He sank to his knees, dropping the lighter. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I cuffed him with numb fingers, adrenaline draining. He was just a man, flawed, desperate, but his actions spoke volumes about the stakes of this fight. Outside, Morales oversaw the scene, evidence catalogued, the suspect in custody. Liam joined me, eyes grim. What now? I exhaled, gaze shifting to the rising sun. Now, we rebuild, again, and we make sure this community stands stronger for having faced the flames, literal and figurative. Liam nodded. "And Arya?" I smiled, feeling the morning warmth on my face. "She carries our story forward. Let's get back to the dealership and finish what we started." As we walked away, I looked back at the truck, then ahead to the open road. The path remained long and winding, but with each step, each challenge overcome, I grew more certain that no obstacle could extinguish the fire of resilience I carried within. The morning after the arsonist's arrest, the air at the dealership felt electric with possibility and relief. Volunteers arrived before sunrise, rolling up their sleeves to clear debris and restore damaged equipment. The fire's black scars were being replaced with fresh paint and organized tool stations, each stroke of the roller a testament to resilience. I stood alongside Liam in the partially rebuilt workshop bay, surveying the efforts. He handed me a cup of strong coffee, the steam spiraling into the dawning light. "Look at this," he said, pointing to a wall we had dedicated to community stories. Photos of workshop attendees, handwritten thank you notes pinned beside them. "We've filled every inch since yesterday." I nodded, throat tight. They're not just rebuilding a shop, they're rebuilding hope. Just then, my phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from an unexpected source. The CEO of a national automotive parts supplier who had watched our journey unfold through local and national media coverage. He offered to sponsor our entire equipment replacement cost, no strings attached. Tears pricked my eyes. "Liam," I whispered, "they want to help." He grinned. "Looks like our story hit the big leagues." I drafted my reply swiftly, expressing gratitude and outlining our vision for the space: a fully equipped, solar-powered workshop wing dedicated to teaching underserved youth. With funding secured, we could finally expand. The CEO's prompt response confirmed a tour that afternoon, meaning we had to present a polished plan in hours. We gathered the core team, mechanics, volunteer coordinators, and our marketing lead, Abby, around the conference table. "We have a sponsor meeting in 4 hours," I began, heart thudding with excitement. "They're covering replacement of all damaged equipment and want to see our expansion plans. We need a presentation that shows them our blueprint, the solar installation, expanded class schedules, the youth outreach partnership, everything." Abby pulled up slide templates on her tablet. "I've drafted an agenda: mission impact, community testimonials, projected outcomes, budget breakdown." Liam added, "We should include footage from last night's rebuild, time-lapse videos of volunteers painting and welding, real emotion." I smiled. "And our students," I said, recalling faces of eager teens learning to use torque wrenches. "We need them in the mix." By midday, we transformed the conference room into a creative studio, cameras set up to record testimonial clips, a volunteer couple queued to speak, and Aria, my unspoken partner, staged outside visible through the window. I rehearsed my speech, opening with my story of loss and redemption, transitioning into the workshop's evolution, and culminating in the solar-powered youth initiative. At 3 p.m., the CEO arrived with his executive team. He was tall, silver-haired, and exuded calm confidence. We led them through the story, every step of the crisis and recovery, and unveiled our expansion blueprint. When we concluded, the CEO leaned back, eyes bright. "Impressive," he said. "Your resilience and community engagement are exactly what we seek in our partners. We're thrilled to support this initiative." He slid a check across the table, enough to cover equipment costs and initial solar panel installation. The room erupted in cheers. I felt the weight of every struggle lift, as I realized this moment marked a turning point, from rebuilding to true growth. Over the next days, construction crews installed solar panels, and our workshop bays glowed with new lifts and diagnostic equipment. Community attendance doubled for advanced engine clinics, and local schools scheduled field trips. The youth outreach program launched, inviting at-risk teens to earn workshop credits leading to paid apprenticeships. One afternoon, I found myself standing before a group of students, teaching a lesson on engine compression tests. Their faces were lit with curiosity, some tentative, others determined. I paused, glancing down at my tools branded with our sponsor's logo, then out the window at Aria gleaming in the lot. I inhaled deeply. This was why I fought so hard. Why I endured betrayal, sabotage, fire, and lingering doubt. Because every handshake, every spark of understanding, every restored engine meant I was driving change far beyond a single car. As I wrapped up the demonstration, the students applauded, their eyes shining. I raised my wrench in salute. "Remember," I said, voice steady, "you belong here. This is your classroom, your community, and the journey is yours to drive." They cheered, echoing in the workshop. And I knew the road ahead, though long, would be paved with the stories we'd share, the lives we'd change, and the undeniable truth that resilience, when kindled, roars louder than any engine. The dawn of a new season arrived with crisp air and golden sunlight that danced across the dealership's gleaming surfaces. The solar panels on the workshop roof captured every ray, powering diagnostics equipment and lighting the bays well into the night. What once began as a struggle to reclaim Aria now blossomed into a thriving community beacon. Yet growth demanded vigilance. With more students, expanded programs, and heightened visibility, I found myself at the center of an ever-widening circle of expectations. Each morning, I reviewed enrollment numbers, equipment maintenance logs, and social media analytics, data points that had replaced the adrenaline-fueled urgency of early crises. But I thrived on it. Precision was my second nature. One crisp morning, as I walked through the workshop bay, I encountered a group of reporters filming a segment about innovative educational programs. They had cameras set to capture the students dismantling a classic engine. I paused, watching a young woman, bright-eyed and determined, hold up a piston. "Ms. Holloway?" one reporter called. "Care to comment?" I approached with a confident stride, offering a quick nod to the crew. This program demonstrates that real-world skills can transform lives. It's not just about cars. It's about empowerment, community, and reimagining what education means. The cameras panned to the students, their focused faces radiating possibility. After the interview, I led the CEO of the parts supplier on a tour of the workshop's latest additions: virtual reality diagnostic stations, a dedicated restoration corner for classic models, and a display wall showcasing Aria's evolution, from rusty relic to shining icon. He watched, impressed, but his final question lingered: "What's next?" I paused, heart quickening. We expand beyond this dealership. We open satellite workshops in underserved neighborhoods, creating a network of community hubs. And I want to start a scholarship fund that awards vocational training to those who can't afford tuition. He considered for a moment, then smiled. "Let's make it happen." Another nod of support, and my vision extended across the city, and eventually, the country. That night, Liam and I convened with Abby, Javier, and other key team members in the conference room. On the table, I spread a map dotted with potential locations for our next satellite workshops: inner-city garages, abandoned auto shops ripe for renovation, and even a decommissioned bus that could be converted into a mobile classroom. Javier tapped a finger on a spot near his old neighborhood. "This one used to be my uncle's shop. He'd let us use the bays when I was a kid." His eyes gleamed. "It'd be perfect for apprentices from around here." Abby chimed in. "I've drafted community outreach plans, partnerships with local schools, workforce development boards, and youth centers. We'll need funding, but our network is stronger than ever." Liam scrawled a timeline on the board: site visits next week, renovation plans in 3 months, pilot workshops by year's end. "It's ambitious," he admitted, "but that's our strength." I stood back, taking in the energized faces around me. This collaboration was my proudest achievement. From the day my parents sold Aria, I never imagined I'd transform a personal dream into a movement. The next morning, I received an unexpected call from an international educational foundation based in London. They'd read about our program in an automotive industry journal and wanted to send a delegation to learn from our model. "We believe your approach could revolutionize vocational training worldwide," their director said. "Will you come to present in 2 months?" My breath caught. An audience on that scale was unimaginable. But as I thought of the students honing their skills, the community rallying around us, and Aria's legacy breathing life into every venture, I realized this was the next horizon. "Yes," I said, voice firm. "We'll be there." A few weeks later, I stood before the international delegates in a London conference hall, Aria's story projected behind me on a massive screen. Heads nodded, questions fired, and applause thundered as I detailed our grassroots to global journey. But across the room, I saw my parents in the front row, my mother's eyes glistening, my father's jaw set in proud admiration. Their presence filled the final gap in the circle of my journey. They had doubted, they had sold, they had watched, but now they understood. After the presentation, my mother approached, trembling. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "We never knew what it meant to you." I embraced her, mindful of the cameras and crowd. "You believed in me, Mom. Now you see why I had to fight." As I looked out over the audience, I realized that Aria's roar, once muffled by betrayal, now echoed across continents. And in that roar lay a testament that dreams, when fueled by passion and community, could transform not only a car, but the world. The moment I stepped off the plane back on home soil, the familiar hum of the airport offered a comforting reminder of where this journey began. Clutching my carry-on, I inhaled the scent of wood polish and engine oil from the nearby car displays, my heart simultaneously rooted in the global stage I'd just conquered and grounded by the community that had shaped me. The roar of Arya's story had carried me across continents. But it was here, in the place where steel met sweat and hearts melded around common purpose, that the real work beckoned. Back at the dealership, I found Liam waiting, arms crossed but a smile lighting his face. "Welcome home," he said, extending a hand that spoke of countless shared battles and shared victories. I shook his hand, warmth flooding through me. "Feels good to be back." We convened with the leadership team in the conference room, which now bore the marks of 14 chapters of triumph and trial, framed photos of students in welding masks, certificates from international forums, and, of course, Arya's first license plate mounted on the wall. Today's agenda: strategizing the launch of satellite workshops internationally, scaling the Youth Scholarship Fund, and commemorating the 2-year anniversary of reclaiming Arya. Abby opened our master slide deck. The London delegation was impressed. They're offering partnership grants to open pilot programs in 3 European cities. We need to prepare feasibility studies by month's end. She clicked to a slide showing skyline photos of Rome, Berlin, and Madrid. That's our next frontier. Javier punched in numbers on his tablet. We'll need at least 2 trainers per location, and initial equipment costs around €150,000 each. But we can repurpose some components from our manufacturer's network. Keep costs down. He slid the tablet across the table, where I tapped the screen. The math was daunting, but not insurmountable. Liam leaned forward. Local operations managers will be critical. I say we recruit from our top graduates. Give them leadership roles abroad. They know our ethos. A ripple of excitement ran through the room. I smiled at the thought of young men and women, once novices, now steering our mission in new lands. Let's do it. Over the next week, we drafted proposals, lined up ambassador graduates, and secured logistic partners. Messages flew between my phone and Europe. Shipping schedules, modular workshop designs, translation logs. Each email reminded me of how far we'd come. A spark ignited by a single car, now stoked by a worldwide network. On the evening of the dealership's 2nd anniversary, we hosted a celebration under strings of festoon lights in the lot. Arya took center stage, her paint job gleaming under spotlights, surrounded by restored cars she once watched over. Former interns, now full-time instructors, mingled with long-time supporters, their laughter and conversation melding into a chorus of triumph. I stepped onto a makeshift stage, a plywood platform adorned with sponsor banners, and tapped the mic. The chatter subsided. 2 years ago, I began, voice resonating. I stood right where you are now, watching flames consume the workshop I'd built. Every swing of a hammer in that fire felt like a blow to my dreams. But tonight, those flames have forged something unbreakable. We're more than a dealership. We're a movement. The crowd applauded, hands raised like waves. I continued, "Thank you for believing in this dream. For those here tonight, and those watching around the world as we expand to Rome, Berlin, and Madrid, your faith is the fuel that powers our engines. Here's to the next chapter, wherever the road leads." I raised a glass, and a sea of toasts rose in response. The energy pulsed through me, stronger than any victory I'd known. Later, as the festivities wound down, I found myself alone with Arya under a haloed spotlight. I ran my hand along her hood, remembering the first time I turned her key and felt freedom ignite. "We did it, girl," I whispered. "But the journey isn't over." At that moment, my phone buzzed with a text that made my blood run cold. "Emergency meeting at dawn. Call if you have intel." My breath caught. I stared at the message, then back at Arya's reflection in the polished paint. The road ahead had taken unexpected turns before, and I knew it would again. But I was ready, key in hand, to face whatever lay beyond the horizon. The pre-dawn darkness pressed close as I slipped into the dealership's conference room. The emergency meeting alert had come from Liam's assistant, urgent and cryptic. My heart thumped, the hum of the world still muffled in the gray light outside. Liam, Abby, and Javier were already seated, eyes grim. On the table lay a single envelope, unmarked. Liam slid it across to me. I tore it open, revealing a printout of an official-looking court summons. filed by Bennett Industries, seeking an injunction to seize ownership of Aria and halt our international expansion, alleging breach of the original purchase contract. My breath caught. The fight I thought was won was back on, a legal war that threatened to strip away everything we'd built. I steadied myself. "They never stopped," I whispered. Liam's jaw clenched. "They found a clause in the amendment, an obscure liability clause. They want to use it to reclaim the car." Abby's hand flew to her mouth. "If they file in multiple jurisdictions, in the UK, Germany, and Italy, our expansions freeze." I met their eyes. Exhaustion and defiance blazed within me. "We fight." I commandeered a whiteboard, scrawling strategies, legal defenses, media campaigns, stakeholder letters, emergency fundraising. Each plank bolstered by our global network, that network we had nurtured since day one. We go public with this, as we did before. We leverage every partnership. We rally the community. We remind the world that this story is ours. The team rallied. Javier called our pro bono legal contacts. Abby drafted press releases for all regions. Liam coordinated with our international offices to ensure local counsel would file urgent counter motions. I paused, looking at Aria's license plate on the wall behind me, etched with the date I reclaimed her. Memories flooded. The moment the pen scratched the purchase paper, the roar of the auction, the trials by fire and sabotage. In the days that followed, our notification rippled across social media and news outlets. "Reclaiming Aria, global community rises against corporate overreach," read headlines. Petitions amassed signatures. International mentors and students posted solidarity videos. Investors doubled down, financing a legal defense fund for every jurisdiction. Meanwhile, I sat before a judge in London, then in Berlin, then in Rome. Virtual hearings connected by video link. Each time, I recounted my journey, my community's support, and the spirit of collaboration that defined our movement. When the injunction motions came, the judges hesitated, moved by the groundswell of public sentiment and legal scrutiny. Back home, we prepared for a final hearing in New Orleans. The courtroom buzzed with reporters and supporters, banners reading, "Aria's story is our story." Bennett Sr. sat across the aisle, expression unreadable beneath the glare of cameras. When the judge delivered the ruling, dismissing the injunction motions and affirming our rightful ownership, jubilation exploded. I felt tears slipping down my cheeks as the gavel fell. Outside, supporters cheered, confetti fluttered, and Aria's engine revved in celebration. I climbed into her seat, hand on the wheel, and took a deep breath. "This story belongs to all of us," I announced to the crowd and to the world. "It's a testament to resilience, community, and the belief that a single spark can ignite global change. Thank you for driving this journey with me." I turned the key. The engine roared predictably, power coursing through every inch of metal and memory. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.